Hello, everybody. Welcome in, class. This is Riichi Mahjong, presented by Rizul. So, you've probably seen this game around the block on Twitch. A lot of that is my fault. I teach a lot of VTubers Mahjong. Not all of you here may be VTubers, but, you know. Mahjong is a social game first and foremost. You can have a lot of fun with your friends, simply clacking the tiles around and shooting the poop with them, having a good time. And I'd like to be your guide for that tonight. So, the thing that may have ever happened to somebody who has ever played Mahjong before is that they've started their game, they've been thrown in to the arena with their friends, they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing, the game loads up, and this shows up right in front of them, and they're thinking, this is quite a few more cards than poker. They show up with this many tiles, this shows up in their hand, you're still looking at it, you're still figuring out what to process, and you have 20 seconds to make a decision. What do you do? For Mahjong, I think the thing that gets a lot of people filtered, you've probably seen it all the time in Twitch chats and things like that of people streaming Mahjong, is that there'll be a guy that shows up and announces very publicly that they have no idea what's going on. And that, at a front, is understandable and acceptable. The issue is that there's a culture behind thinking that Mahjong is fundamentally hard to understand. Now, don't get me wrong, it is not an easy game to learn compared to many others. There are quite a few more fundamental rules that you need to know to get started, quite a few mechanics. It's not extremely difficult, but it is there's some bar to entry. Now, the main thing that you're going to need here is not intelligence. You're not going to get IQ gated trying to learn Mahjong. It's not difficult in that sense. The thing that's difficult in Mahjong for learning is simply your commitment. If you can afford to sit down for a couple hours and just listen, you'll get it. Because it's not actually the most, highbrow concepts in the world. You just need to sit down and focus for a little bit. So, the fundamental practice of Mahjong works similar to many card games. And there's quite a few things that come across as filters where you'll look at something and be like, I can't be bothered learning this seems too complicated. This rule is very esoteric, this system is something that I'm not familiar with from other games. But there are so many games out there that you probably know the rules to, that you could have come to grips to in Mahjong with just as easily, but you're probably getting filtered by just, the vibe of it. You understand? Learning wall rather than the curve, and it's not the tallest wall in the world. So, what I'd like to do is demonstrate how, while the tiles in front of you may look extremely complicated if you have no idea what's going on, there's some intuition involved that you can piece together quite quickly. So before I teach you Mahjong, I'd like to teach you this game that I invented for the purposes of educating on the game. This is called Draw and Discard to Complete Patterns. It's a very simple game, to the point that I'm not going to tell you the rules to it. And you're just going to figure it out using the power of the mind. So in this game, you draw and discard to complete patterns. Here is pattern 1. Or rather, here is your first hand. Your hand size limit is 4. And you just drew the 10 of spades. Intuitively, what would you discard here in order to match your cards together? Which of these would you discard? The 7? Absolutely correct. Oh, look at that. 4 of these are now in the row, and in the same suits. That seems pretty cool. 4 hearts, that's the next hand. You know, I didn't tell you that a 4 in the row of the same suits is correct, but that's what you intuited, right? Because this kind of thing can make sense. For the next hand, you've drawn a 4 of spades. Which of these would you discard to complete patterns? Correct. Last question. Which of these 5 would you discard? What could it be? What's a pattern? Okay, you see me after class. Correct. 4 of a kind. In poker, 4 of a kind is a hand. But you do not need to be taught that 4 of a kind is a hand to think, if you're playing poker blindly for the first time and you have 4 of a kind in your hand, to think, hey, that's pretty good. You can intuit that. And there's a lot to Mahjong that works the exact same way. There are things that people get filtered on with oh, how am I supposed to know what the east wind is? And it's brother, how are you supposed to know what a king of spades is without this being the kind of thing that you learned as a child, you know? If you can figure out what the king of spades is, you can figure out what the one of bamboos is. If you could figure out this game, you can figure out this game. Mahjong is also the game where you draw and discard to complete patterns. We're gonna figure out how we can turn a jumble of tiles like this into a nice clean set of completed tiles like this. Firstly, what we need to learn, we're gonna be introducing to you the first suit of tiles in the game. Now, we're gonna be calling them tiles, but these are essentially cards. Mahjong as a game originally was made with cards, because people didn't know if the game was gonna be any popular, and they didn't want to spend money developing tiles when nobody played it. This is the first suit. These are called circles. In the Japanese, it's pinzu. I'm going to be trying to use English terminology throughout the lesson, but eventually, you know, as you play with more and more people, you're going to be picking up more and more Japanese terms and getting to grips with it, so, you know, strap into that. They go numbered from 1 through 9. There is no 10. There is no jack of circles. There is no... Well, I mean, I guess there is an ace, but it's just a 1. All you need to understand is that these are the numbers 1 through 9 and they're in the same suit. And here's what you can do with them. The first thing, and the most common thing that you can do with this numbered suit of tiles, is create a sequence. A sequence in Mahjong is a 3 in a row. Not 4, not 2, 3 in a row. And with those, you can make 1, 2, 3s, 2, 3, 4s, 3, 4, 5s, and so on and so forth. Addendum, the number line does not loop. So I believe it works just like poker. You cannot make an 8-9-1. You cannot make a 9-1-2. You cannot make a sequence like this. This is not... This really isn't on. You cannot do that. Another thing that you can make out of these tiles are triplets. This should be even more understandable. I don't even have an addendum for you. It's a 3 of a kind. 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, etc., etc. Okay? Now, sequences and triplets, here's a new piece of terminology. Sequences and triplets are both referred to as melds. Your goal in Mahjong is primarily in creating sequences and triplets. Either of them function for what we're trying to do. These are the patterns that you are drawing and discarding to create. And so both of them are referred to as melds. There is one last thing that you can make out of these tiles, which are pairs. Pairs are 2 of a kinds. Pairs are not melds. Correct. Pairs are not melds. They are still important, but they are not melds. Other piece of terminology here is a joint. A joint is a group of tiles that can become a meld by drawing another connecting tile. So just to explain here, these are 4 groups of joints, and they are joints because by drawing one certain kind of tile, we will then turn that joint into a meld. We have a 1 and 2 of circles. What is the tile that would turn the 1 and 2 of circles into a meld? 3-pin? Correct. You make a 1, 2, 3 sequence. We have a 4 and a 5. What is a tile that can turn this into a completed sequence? 3 or 6-pin. Correct, and bonus points. 6-pin is obviously very clearly a way to make a 4, 5, 6 sequence, but 3 is also able to make a 3, 4, 5. So there's multiple ways to turn a joint into a meld. You have to consider that if you want to play the game well. We have a 7 and a 9. What is the tile? 8-pin? Correct. This also can turn this joint into a sequence. Last up, we have a pair. We have a pair of 9 circles. This is also able to be referred to as a joint. Generally speaking, people refer to joints when they talk about the kinds of shapes that can make sequences, but you can also talk about pairs in the context of a joint in that you can make a triplet. And I probably don't need to prompt you guys to tell me what is the tile that can turn this into a triplet. It's another one of them. And there you have your triplet. So, what have we learned from this slide? We've learned about one of the suits, we've learned what a sequence is, we've learned what a triplet is, we've learned what a pair is. Sequences and triplets are both called melds. Pairs are not melds, but they are still important to keep track of. And a joint is a smaller set of tiles, usually 2 tiles, where one more type of tile will turn it into a meld. The next thing that we need to understand, in the goal of completing a hand, is what a complete hand is. Now, I don't have the note written down here on the slide, I believe, but one thing that you may have noticed is that a Mahjong hand consists of 14 tiles. Generally speaking, throughout gameplay, you will have 13 tiles in your hand, and on your turn, you will draw the 14th, and then be prompted to discard one of those 14. And so, in the process of playing, you will be swapping out through your group of 13 tiles until you receive a 14th tile that causes your hand to be complete. What is a complete hand? Let's figure that out. Again, a meld is a sequence or a triplet, and a pair is a pair. A complete hand consists of 4 melds and 1 pair. Here is a template for you. We have a sequence. 1, 2, 3. That's meld number 1. 3 tiles. We have another sequence. That's a 3, 4, 5. It's a second meld. That's 6 tiles total. We have a triplet. That's a third meld and another 3 tiles for 9 total. We have another sequence, which is a 4th meld, and is now 12 tiles total. And now we have a pair, which is another 2 tiles for 14 together. This is your template for a complete hand. When you're playing Mahjong, you want to build something along these lines. Now, just so you don't get it twisted, doesn't necessarily need to be of the circles, it doesn't necessarily need to be 3 sequences and a triplet, you can mix and match here, alright? You can have 2 sequences and 2 triplets, you can have 4 sequences or 4 triplets. The point is that you have 4 melds, and a pair. That is the core of completing a hand in Mahjong, and completing a hand in Mahjong is the core of the game. If you understand this, you basically already know how to play. If we're all good with that, then I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the tiles in the game. In Mahjong, there are... oh shoot, I always forget this number. 108 different number tiles in the game, and 28 of another type of tile that I'll talk about later, adding up to 136 total. We already talked about the circles, the pinzu, and there are 2 other types of number tiles in the game. You can tell that they're number tiles because they've got numbers on them. And that's probably going to be helping you out a lot, the numbers in the top right, because while you can count the circles in the pinzu, in the circles, it's a little bit more complicated for something like the manzu. This is the suit of tiles that makes people filter themselves out of the game because they think it's too complicated. Let me reiterate. If you can understand what this means, bearded man with a shovel, you can understand what this means, peculiar Chinese character with a 9 in the corner. Alright? Your second suit in Mahjong are characters. They are also called man, or manzu for the plural, and they are also numbered 1 through 9. Eventually, you can probably learn what the kanji here mean, and identify the 6 without needing to see that it's a 6. You know, you'll be able to, be like, okay, yeah, this is a 6. But for now, don't ever feel any shame using the Arabic numerals in the corner, alright? We have characters, which are the man, we have circles, which are the pin, and lastly, we have bamboo, which are the sozu for plural, which again, work the exact same mechanically. The only thing that would really trip you up is that the 1 is a bird. It's not a bamboo, it's a bird, but it is still the 1-so. One thing to understand about the number tiles. Again, we can make sequences or triplets or pairs out of numbers. But now we have 3 suits. And so I'm going to answer a question before it's typed, which is that melds cannot be made out of different suits. You cannot make a 3-character, 4-circle, 5-bamboo sequence. You cannot make a 6-character, 6-circle, 6-bamboo triplet. These are not viable. And now we're going to add 2 more suits. Instead of just number tiles, we also have what you could understand as letter tiles. That's just a little term that I like to use, but you can go ahead with it too. These are called honor tiles. There are 2 different types of them. There are 3 different types of number tiles, and there are 2 different types of honor tiles. These are lettered tiles that you can only make triplets or pairs with. Your first type of honor tile are the winds. The winds are tiles representing directions. This is mildly relevant, but all you need to understand is that you have east and south and west and north, in that a triplet of easts would be 3 easts, or a pair of norths would be 2 norths. There's no such thing as an east-south-west sequence. Next up, we have the other honor tile. This is the other type of honor tile, they're called dragons. There is the white dragon, which is blank, the green dragon, which is green, and the red dragon, which is red. Same deal as the wind tiles. You can only make triplets or pairs, and you can only match them together. This is the entire toolkit of Mahjong. You have 3 suits of number tiles, and you have 2 types of honor tiles. Number tiles go 1 through 9, and you can make sequences, triplets, or pairs with them. Honor tiles, there are 4 types of winds and 3 types of dragons, and you can only make triplets or pairs with them. Last thing to note with the toolkit here is that there are 4 of each type of tile in a game of Mahjong. In poker, there is 1 ace of spades, unless they do the weird deck splitting thing in casinos and stuff. There's 1 King of Hearts, there's 1 2 of Diamonds. In Mahjong, there are 4 White Dragons, 4 East Winds, 4 9 Circles, 4 5 Bamboos, etc, etc. So if you put together the mathematics here, you have 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 7, which is 34. 34 different tiles in the game, and there are 4 of each of them, for 136 total. Just so that you can, like, get an understanding of what you're working with. We will be playing digitally more often than not, so, you know, just try to visualize that in your head. If we understand now what the melds are, what a completed hand is, and what the tiles are in the game, then we're actually already ready to complete this. We can actually complete this hand right now. You and you alone have the skills to do this. Are you ready? All we have to do is put the knowledge that we have covered already to use and bring this hand to a completed state. Looking at what we have here, we have a 1-3 joint of the characters, we have a 6-7 joint of characters, we have a 4-4-6 arrangement of circles, we have a 1-2 of bamboo, we have a 6 and an 8 and a 9 of bamboo, and we have a west and a green dragon. Usually you want to read your hand in terms of, like, breaking them up into these joints. So you can start to figure out in your head what tiles would complete these joints. We're going to see what we discard and draw and work through it. Here, we're going to be discarding the green dragon. It does not appear to be a very quick and easily usable joint. We're just going to turf it to the corner. We're going to draw our next tile now. Now that is convenient. We've managed to draw ourselves a west wind, which can be used as a pair. It's also readable as a joint to create a triplet. With this pair in place, we now want to discard something else. Our immediate thing to notice here is that we have a 6 and 8 and 9 of bamboo. Now, obviously, a 6 and an 8 can be a joint where we may be able to create a sequence by drawing a 7. We could also read that we have an 8 and a 9, which can be a joint, which is also able to be completed by drawing a 7. So we could make either a 6-7-8 sequence, or a 7-8-9 sequence. What this means is that the 9 here doesn't really change the fact that our hand is able to create a sequence by drawing a 7. What this means is that the 9 doesn't really enable it. It's kind of excessive. That's an important concept to understand. Since we can already accept a 7 into the hand, the 9 isn't really helping us do that. We're gonna go ahead and turf it. And then we get to make our next draw. Well, how very convenient. We've managed to draw ourselves a 7 of bamboo. That can slot in very comfortably here to create a 6-7-8 sequence. We've just completed a meld. How about that? Just so that we're aware here again, we've completed a pair, and we've now completed a sequence. Now we have to go ahead and make another discard. What we can analyze on the left-hand side here is that we have 4 different viable joints. We have the 1-3 character, 6-7 character, 4-4-6 circle, and 1-2 bamboo. I'm not going to explain the full details of it for the purposes of efficiency here, but we need to get rid of one of these joints. We've already completed one of our melds, we only need 3 more. We have 4 joints that are capable of making 4 melds. We only need 3 joints to create 3 melds in order to complete the hand, so one of these joints here has to go entirely. What we're going to end up discarding from this is going to be the 1 of bamboo, just because we think that the other joints are more likely to be complete, which we can explain later. Let's see what our next draw is. Very conveniently, we've managed to draw a 4 of circles. What we can do here is swap out our 6 of circles and create a strong, hearty triplet of circles. That's another meld complete. Now let's go ahead and see what our next draw is here. That's not the draw button. That's the draw button. Give me that. We have been able to once again draw a useful tile. The 5 of characters can be used alongside the 6 and 7 of characters to create another sequence. Now, like I said, since we were breaking up the 1 and 2 bamboo joint, we're going to go ahead and cut the 2 bamboo and move these things over here. And what you can see now is that we've been able to complete a sequence, a triplet, a sequence, and a pair, which means that we are at 3 melds and 1 pair complete, which means we have only 1 joint left to complete in order to finish the hand. Tenpai. When you are working to complete a hand, and you have 3 melds and a pair complete, or 4 melds complete but you don't have a pair yet, you only need to complete one more shape in your hand, joint in your hand rather, in order to complete it. This is called tenpai, when you are 1 away from completing the hand, or 1 away from winning. And as we can see, all we need left is to complete this joint, to complete our 4th meld, and to complete the hand. Can anybody tell me what tile we need in order to complete the hand right now? It's the 2 of characters? Yes, correct. We only need to draw 1 more tile to complete our hand. Let's see if we can draw it. Oh my gosh! By drawing the 2-man, we have completed our final sequence, and therefore have completed the hand, and can declare sumo, which means we have drawn our winning tile, which is a term that I'll teach fully later, but it's fun to say it, so we said it already. This is the entire gameplay loop of Mahjong. If you can understand this, you're already ready to start playing. Completely viably. You could even win games. Draw and discard from a hand of 13 tiles. You draw to 14 and discard back to 13 in order to arrange your hand into viable sequences and triplets, which are referred to as melds. Make 4 melds plus a pair and you win. That is Mahjong. That is the entire gameplay loop. There's plenty more to explain. What we've learnt is how to complete a hand. We've learned how to complete a hand with all the tiles that exist in the game, and we understand what those are and what we can do with them. You know how to complete a hand, but do you know how to win a hand? Unfortunately, there is a distinction. A complete hand must be worth points in order to win. A complete hand, again, is 4 melds plus 1 pair. A winning hand is a complete hand plus at least 1 Yaku. Yes, I'm using more Japanese terminology. This is unavoidable. We can get through this together. If you have no Yaku, you can't win. What is a Yaku? Anybody know? 'Cause I do. A Yaku is a pattern or a condition of a hand that gives it value. It's a certain extra type of pattern specific to what's in the hand, and it'll vary from hand to hand. You're gonna have to find one. Yaku can be stacked together for more value, because there are multiple different types of Yaku, and your hand can qualify for multiple of them. So don't feel intimidated, there's quite a few that you can put together. You're not gonna be unspoiled for choice. Please understand that rare Yaku are more valuable than others. A straight flush is more valuable than a straight, or a flush, or a 3 of a kind, or anything like that. If you can understand poker terms, you can understand Mahjong terms. It works the same way. Here's another piece of terminology. Han. I don't have like an English term for this, so I just had to settle for it. Han is the value of a Yaku. It's the measure of it. Most are worth 1 or 2. So you could, for instance, say, I have this Yaku, it's worth 2 Han, which means your hand is worth 2 Han once you win it. We're not going to explain the full scope of that. To reiterate, there are 42 Yaku in standard rule sets. It's a lot. Let me be clear, you only need to learn 3 Yaku to truly easily get started in the game and be able to have enough fun. Your first Yaku to learn is a pattern. It is called all simples. The Japanese term for it is Tanyao. You're gonna hear that term quite a lot. All simples is when your hand contains only number tiles numbered from 2 to 8. This is worth 1 Han. It is a basic Yaku. It is very common. And as you can see, it's very simple. I don't know if there's even any particular questions here, but just let me reiterate. Only numbers 2 through 8. No 1s, no 9s, and no honors. Only 2 through 8. If you want to get Tanyao, then you discard the tiles that are 1s, 9s, or honors, and you keep the tiles that are numbered 2 through 8. It's a very entry-level Yaku. Next Yaku. It is a pattern that I would refer to as an honor triplet, but you will mostly refer to as Yakuhai. It is worth 1 Han, it is a basic entry-level Yaku, and it is simply that the hand contains a triplet of dragons or prevalent or seat wins. We're going to explain that. This is a pretty easy Yaku to work with. When it comes to dragons, if at all anywhere in your hand there is a triplet of dragon tiles, you have the Yakuhai Yaku. If we looked at this hand again, very easy Yaku. It only takes up 1/5 of the things in your hand. And dragon tiles are always good for that. Here is coming up a thing that people that don't want to learn Mahjong say that they get filtered by, but in actuality, it's learned helplessness. Wind triplets work a little bit more differently than dragon tiles, and you need to understand a new mechanic of the game to comprehend them. Here is the game UI. You're gonna see this box in the center of your screen when you play Mahjong. You're gonna have a letter in front of you. This letter in front of you is your wind. Each player gets a wind, and it's the one in front of them. The wind in front of you is your wind. You will also have a direction written here. This is the wind of the table, or the wind of the round. When it comes to making a Yakuhai out of wind triplets, the only viable winds for this are the winds that match up with the wind of the round or the wind of your seat. They need to match up. So in the case of the screen here, we are the west wind and the table is the east wind. So we can make Yakuhai out of a west wind triplet or an east wind triplet, because the table has allowed for it. We would not be able to make Yakuhai out of a south wind triplet or a north wind triplet, because those are the winds of other players and not the wind of the table either. So that's the one little wrinkle there. Condition Riichi. You can probably already understand the importance of this based on the fact that they named the game after it. Riichi is a Yaku worth 1 Han, and the condition is that you won your hand after declaring Riichi. Yes, this is basically just like declaring Uno in Uno, but it's a little bit more important and a little bit different. In order to declare Riichi, to make your hand viable for the Yaku of Riichi, your hand must be in Tenpai. As we explained previously, when we only had 4 of the 5 parts of the hand complete and needed to complete the final joint, we only needed 1 tile in order to complete the hand, which meant we were 1 away from winning, which meant we were Tenpai. When you are in Tenpai, you are able to declare Riichi. What this will do is lock your hand in, and what this means is that you are no longer able to change the tiles in your hand out. If you had a hand like this, you would draw a tile, it wouldn't be the one that completes your hand. The only tile you were allowed to discard is the tile that you drew. You would then discard that, you would then draw this, and then you would then discard that, you would then draw this, you would then discard that. Because you have locked your hand into place after declaring Riichi, you are basically making a bet that your hand is going to win in the state that it is in, and your hand will become on autopilot until the tile that you need appears. That is Riichi. You are essentially betting that your hand will win. It's risky, because you can no longer change your hand, but it is almost always worth it, I can assure you. You want to have Riichi at the front of your mind almost always when playing Mahjong. These are the 3 primary Yaku for you to learn. Is there an advantage not to declare Riichi? By declaring Riichi, you are locking your hand into place, meaning that you can't exchange any tiles from it. So if we were to say, look at this Tanyao quiz here, what tile should you discard if you want all simples? Let's say that we had this hand right here, and we declared Riichi. What that means, again, remember, this hand currently only wins off of a 2 circle or a 5 circle, meaning any tile that isn't one of those must be discarded because we cannot exchange tiles. What that means is that when we draw the 4 of bamboo, and we're in Riichi, we are not able to discard the 1 of bamboo, meaning that we would not be able to swap out the 1 of bamboo to get all simples. So a thing that you can consider is that you may not want to lock your hand into Riichi immediately, because there are tiles that you could draw that make your hand better beforehand. What I like to do real quick, just to, you know, give you a little bit of a teaser of the future for you with Mahjong, is that those are the 3 basic Yaku for you to internalize, but again, there are another 39 Yaku that you can learn. What I recommend is you can do some research and look up the Yaku ahead of time, but you can also just play the game and learn the Yaku whenever you see another player win that Yaku. It's a pretty good way to remember things. Playing the game is the fastest way to learn, but we're doing the lesson here just as a treat anyway. Regardless, I'm going to spitball a few extra Yaku at you very quickly. No questions really necessary because they're also quite simple. Here's a quick one. All triplets, also known as Toi Toi. It's when your hand consists of only triplets. As you can see, 3 character, 3 1 circle, 3 6 bamboo, 3 7 bamboo, 2 north pair. All you have are triplets and the pair. Just so we're clear, I know it's not only triplets because there's a pair. Every hand has a pair in it, and the rest of the patterns are what the Yaku is reading to be eligible for it. All triplets is worth 2 Han, because it's a little bit harder to make than all simples or a Yakuhai triplet, an honor triplet for Yakuhai, and so it's worth 2 Han instead of 1. It's pretty good. Next up, we have half flush. If you can understand poker, then you can already understand a flush. It's when your hand consists of only 1 suit and honor tiles. As you can see, we have only bamboo, no characters, and no circles, and we also have some honor tiles as well. This is the type of Yaku that makes you understand the difference as well between number tiles and honor tiles. The number tiles are suits, and the honor tiles are just you know, they're letters, they're weird. And it is worth 3 harm, because it's even harder to make. And a Yaku that you can probably intuit is a full flush. If your hand consists of only one suit and you have no honors, entirely bamboo, or entirely circles, or entirely characters, then you have a full flush called Chin Itsu, and it is worth 6 harm, because it's incredibly valuable, and quite rare, but also very easy to understand. So those are some quick extra Yaku. All triplets, half flush, full flush. Let's figure out what it means when we win. To win, you must be in Tenpai, 1 away from complete. You must have at least 1 Yaku. Let me be clear, if you complete your hand, but it has no Yaku in it, you cannot declare a win. You will simply have to make a discard, which could ruin your hand, because you cannot declare a win with no Yaku. Your hand must be worth points. When you are in Tenpai and have at least 1 Yaku, the final tile needed to complete the hand is either drawn by you or discarded by another player, thereby completing your hand. What happens when your winning tile appears? There are 2 different ways that this works. You call your win, and there are 2 different ways that you call it. The first one is sumo. When you draw your winning tile, you win by sumo. That's the thing that you say. It's fun to say. You can try it now. Dora the Explorer pause, waiting for you to say it to yourself. When you win by sumo, the value of your hand is divided among other players and paid to you. So let's say that you won a hand worth 9,000 points, the other 3 players would each pay you 3,000 points. The other way that you can win a hand is by ron. This is what happens when another player discards your winning tile. When this happens, you may declare ron on the tile, and the entire value of your hand is paid to you by that player. If your hand is worth 9,000 points and they discard it, they entirely pay you 9,000 points. This is the Mahjong equivalent of stabbing someone in an alleyway, and I'm sure we all know how good that feels to do. Since when could you pronounce that way? I speak Japanese fluently. To reiterate, Mahjong is a game with other players. So far I've been teaching the game in the sense that you could play it by yourself. Check out our Tenjo on Steam. Mahjong is a 4-player game where your goal is to win your hand before the others do. When you win your hand, their hands are tossed out and you get points. Each player has around 18 draws or discards to complete their hand first, and with extra value where possible. When we were doing the hand completing exercise earlier, I didn't explain that we were not able to draw forever. There is a limited amount of tiles in the game. There are 136 tiles in the game, and you only get to draw around 18 of them in order to complete your hand. You can understand how things start to get difficult at this point. Games of Mahjong take around 4 or 8 rounds to finish. Around 4 or 8 attempts by each player to complete their hand and get points. And the player with the most points at the end wins. That's Mahjong. Now that we know that there are other players, we can now know what calling is. It's an entirely new mechanic. Tiles discarded by other players may be taken by you to meld a shape in your hand. Okay, I intended to correct this. Hehe, oops. This should say joint, not shape. I thought I corrected all of the instances of shape to joint, I missed one. When a player discards a tile that one of your joints can use to become a meld, you may take it from their discards and add it to your hand. A meld consists of 3 tiles. Just to recap, you must have 2 tiles in your hand that can be completed by the tile you wish to call, which is to say, a joint. So just by example, if you have a 1 and 3 characters in your hand, you can call on a 2 of characters to complete the joint. Or, if you have 2 norths, then you can call on a north that is discarded to complete that joint. Can you do that whenever or only when they discard it? Ah, right, yes. It is only on the instant that they make that discard. If they make a discard that you can call, and then another player then takes their turn, you can no longer make a call on that tile. It's only on that instant. My mistake, sorry. Thank you for letting me clarify. When you call a joint, or rather when you call a discard and complete a meld, this will reveal the meld that you completed to other players, so that they know that you did in fact have a 1 and a 3 when you called that too. This will open your hand, which is another mechanic. An open hand is different from whether you didn't make a call, your hand would be considered closed. And then when you call a tile and open your hand, it is now open. An open hand may be completed faster because you're using other players' tiles in order to complete it. But many Yaku require a hand to be closed, and will be made impossible after calling and opening. Do we understand that? Again, calling a tile opens your hand and disables many Yaku. Do not open your hand if you do not know what Yaku your hand will be getting. if you send me a screenshot of your open hand asking why you have no Yaku, when you go to sleep, I'm going to be under your bed. Just to explain here, Riichi is the best Yaku in the game. It is the most popular Yaku in the game, it is one of the strongest, and it is one of the most commonly available. Riichi can only be declared while you're in Tenpai. It can also only be declared while you are in Tenpai for a closed hand. For all simples, this can be achieved with an open hand. You can do that. You may call simple tiles. Don't ever make a call with an honor tile or a 1 or a 9, or you won't have all simples. But if you have nothing but all simples, you can make calls and still have a Yaku, and complete the hand very quickly. But you should consider that tiles number 2 to 8 are again simple to work with, and you can stack them together with Riichi, as we discussed prior, so you can have Riichi and all simples. So what you could do is call and get a very quick all simples hand worth 1 Han, or you could wait, play it a bit more slowly, get Riichi and all simples, and have your hand be worth 2 Han instead of 1. So just always try to consider that calling will make your hand faster, but generally cheaper. Now, on the positive side of things, an honor triplet can be achieved open. It's generally kind of difficult to do otherwise, because if you're not calling the dragon tile, then you're just hoping that you draw it yourself. So now that I know what calling is, we can now finally learn what type of calls there are. The first simple one is chi. This is calling to complete a sequence. If you have a joint, such as a 6 or 8 of circles, then if somebody discards a 7 of circles, you may call chi and complete that sequence. Sequences are very easy to complete, and there are often multiple tiles that can be used to complete that sequence. Because of this, you may only call chi on the player to your left. As you can see here, more of the game UI revealed here, the player to this player's left, over here, this player on the left discarded the 7, and so you as the POV here had the 6-8 and were able to call chi. If the player on the right over here discarded a 7, you would not be able to call chi on it. Chi is for completing a sequence and only on the player to your left. Your other type of call is called pon. This is calling to complete a triplet. So if you have a pair of a tile and an identical one is discarded, you may call pon on that tile to complete the triplet. This may be done on any player. As you can see here, a player not on the left discarded it, and we are able to call pon. Chi for sequence, player on the left, pon for triplet, any player you want. There is one last final type of call, and that is called kan. This is super pon. You can upgrade a triplet to a quad. I will not be explaining the full extent of this, because there's quite a lot to it, but essentially, you are adding the 4th tile to your triplet. Your hand still has to have 4 melds and a pair, it's just that one of your melds is a triplet with an extra tile added onto it. Nothing really changes in terms of the gameplay, except usually declaring Khan will open your hand, and usually declaring Khan will not give you Yaku, but it may increase the value of your hand in other ways that we'll be explaining shortly. All you really need to know about Khan, to call it, you already need a triplet in your hand, which means you already have a completed meld in your hand, so declaring Khan usually does not help you too much in completing your hand, and it can often open your hand, which means you might not be having Yaku anymore, so whenever you declare Khan, try to make sure that you have Yaku first. Here's a new mechanic. Here's a way to get more points into your hand. You can get Riichi and add some more points to it with various things, usually Yaku. You can get all simples and add more points to it with other Yaku. Here's another way to add more points to your hand. These are called Dora. To explain. Every round, in the 4 to 8 rounds that you'll be playing, a random tile is marked as the Dora, a random type of tile. So for instance, a 9 of characters could be the Dora. That means all of the 4 9 of characters in the game are Dora. Dora tiles increase the value of your hand. Usually, this is by 1 Han per Dora. Dora are not Yaku. Dora are not Yaku. You cannot win with them alone. If you have a completed hand with no Yaku, but it has Dora, you can still not win that hand. It must have a Yaku. Dora are simply bonus points. A winning hand is a completed hand plus Yaku, not a completed hand plus Dora. Yaku are necessary. But Dora are very good too. Dora are decided by the Dora indicator. This is another mechanic that people try to filter themselves by, but you can get it if you listen for just like a couple of minutes. At the start of each round, a tile will be revealed. This tile won't be available for general use of play in the game. It is used to indicate what the Dora tile is. The way that the Dora indicator works is that the tile that comes after the indicator in a sequence is the Dora. So just by example, if the 1 of characters is the indicator, then the 2 of characters is the Dora. If the 9 of bamboo is the indicator, and I know this was not me lying, okay? Sequences do not loop around. You cannot make an 8-9-1 sequence, but Dora indicators do loop around. If the 9 of bamboo is the indicator, then it loops around, and the 1 of bamboo is the Dora. That's how the number tiles work. The 1 would make the 2 Dora, the 2 would make the 3 Dora, the 9 would make the 1 Dora, it loops around. The honor tiles work a little bit more complicatedly. There are quite a few mnemonics though. When it comes to the wind tiles, the north wind makes the east wind Dora, the east wind makes the Dora the south wind, and the south wind makes the Dora the west wind, and the west wind makes the Dora the north wind. It goes north, east, south, west. Never eat soggy wheat flakes. There's your mnemonic, okay? There's your easy peasy mnemonic. It's a clockwise compass. For the dragons, green makes red, makes white, makes green, Dora. You can some people say you can memorize this alphabetically. It goes G, then R, then W, and then it loops around back to G. I recommend Great Robot Wars, GRW. More types of Dora. There are 4 of every type of tile in Mahjong. There are 4 9 of characters, there are 4 north winds, there are 4 1 of bamboos, and there are 4 5 of characters, and there are 4 5 of circles, and there are 4 5 of bamboos. Of those 4 for each 5, 1 of them are red. So there are 3 plain 5 bamboos, and 1 red 5 bamboo. These work exactly like regular Dora. They are also called Ako Dora, which makes it cooler. Another type of Dora, Khan Dora. Every time Khan is called by any player, a new Dora indicator is revealed. You could have a 8 of character Dora indicator, somebody declares Khan, you now have an 8 character indicator and a 5 bamboo indicator. So now there are 2 different types of Dora on the field, which means there's twice the amount of Dora that people have access to. Calling Khan can give you or other players very strong hands because you're adding more Dora to the field. So I would generally call it a risk, because when you call Khan, somebody else might get Dora instead of you. And again, Khanning doesn't necessarily get you Yaku or make your hand get closer to completion, so you may have a hand that isn't very likely to win, but you just made somebody's hand who is likely to win also more valuable. So please Khan responsibly in your games. There's one more type of Dora, which is Ura Dora. I was explaining how Riichi is a very good Yaku, or a very good thing to declare. This is one of the reasons why. When you win whilst in Riichi, a new Dora indicator is revealed. A new Dora indicator is revealed per Dora indicator in play, and if any of those new indicators indicate a tile in the Riichi player's winning hand, more Dora is added to their hand. Uradora are basically Riichi bonus points that you roll for in a Mahjong lottery to send your hand to the moon after you've won Riichi. This is one of the greater ways that Riichi can add a lot of value to your hand. And it's also one of the reasons that why, if there's a player in Riichi, declaring Khan is very scary, because they get more Uradora per indicator, and adding more Khans adds more indicators, which adds more Uradora chance, which can make things a bit of a problem. So those are Dora. Furiten. Another mechanic people would describe as esoteric, but really I just think they're mad that they got into it. Furiten is a state where you are unable to declare a win for your hand because you have messed something up. The way that it works, and I'll try to explain this simply enough, is that if your discards, the tiles that you've discarded throughout the game, contain any tiles that your Tenpai hand could win with, you cannot win by Ron. You cannot win from another player's discard. You can only win by Sumo. Visual aid here. This player is currently in Furiten because they are bad. They are not able to declare Ron, but they are able to declare Sumo. The reason here, as we can see, is that they currently have an uncompleted 2-3 bamboo, meaning that their hand is complete by either a 1 of bamboo or a 4 of bamboo. They have discarded a 1 of bamboo right here, in the past. Because one of their winning tiles is in their discard pool, they cannot declare Ron at all. Because they have discarded the 1 of bamboo, their hand is in Furiten. What this means is that they cannot declare Ron on any tile. They've discarded the 1, but they also cannot declare Ron on the 4 either. Furiten is a state of your hand. If one of your discards is a winning tile for you, then all of your winning tiles are Furiten and you cannot Ron. There are many ways that you can get into Furiten. The most common one is calling when you don't have Yaku, because what might happen is that you don't have Yaku. You draw the tile that could complete your hand, but since you don't have Yaku, you cannot win, and therefore you have to make a discard. So you've discarded from your completed but not winning hand. And what this does is it gets you back into Tenpai for a tile that you just discarded, immediately putting you into Furiten. Most Furitens are because you called without Yaku. Do not call without Yaku. Make sure that you have a Yaku. If you don't know what Yaku your hand will be getting, just don't make a call. Just go for Riichi, man. Figure it out along the way. Or go for it, you know, test your limits, see what's viable and what isn't, because the fastest way to learn how to play Mahjong is to play the game. I recommend it. That is the lecture for today.